I have a clinical diagnosis for it. It's called bratism. And I see it. I see the kid that started being a little unruly at 12 and then has an older brother who's, varsity captain of the basketball team, and the younger sister who makes straight A's, and who gets all the attention.
Yeah.
And so I really think it's a habitual behavior. I mean, when I'm good, I don't get this kind of, when I'm bad, boy, I get it all. And I've spent a long time, I really actually considered writing a whole chapter to my book called, the kids that are left behind, because, I don't have anything to worry about. My daughter, she's a straight A student. She's going to Brown. She bought her own car. She's had a job since she was 12, babysitting. And I go, and boy, are they resentful.
Hello and welcome to another exclusive interview by Recovery Today Magazine at recoverytodaymagazine.com, where first and foremost, we're a magazine of hope. Whether you're considering addiction recovery for yourself or a loved one, or you're actively in recovery a short while or many years, you'll find information on all topics related to addiction, recovery, codependency, and living a happy, successful, sober life at Recovery Today. My name is Sherry Gaba. I'm the editor of Recovery Today, and I have the distinct pleasure of interviewing another great guest. I have today with me Candy Finnigan. She is a nationally recognized author, addiction specialist, and interventionist, who is currently one of the featured interventionists on the acclaimed A&E series, Intervention. The show has been widely praised since 2004 and is a groundbreaking example of how reality TV and therapeutic efforts can be combined. Personally in recovery for 33 years, Candy states, I was inspired to go into this work because I saw that as a recovery woman, I might be able to connect and bring help and hope to suffering people in a way that others couldn't. And it's not just my work, it is my life. She has been honored by many organizations for her work and dedication in the recovery field. She's been involved in all areas of recovery for over 30 years, not only as an interventionist, she is also a relapse preventionist. I can't even say it. A relapse preventionist. A relapse preventionist. Sorry about that. Holding a certification in the Gorski method, having been trained 1996 by Terence Gorski. Additionally, she has extensive experience in assessment, placement, family programs, aftercare. She's been a group facilitator for many years with both adults and adolescents. She has worked with students at the Beverly Hills High School as a drug and alcohol specialist counselor for 11 years, acting as a facilitator of the Sober Lunch program. As one of the original founders of MAP, Musicians Assistant Program, Music Cares, Candy continues to educate and facilitate through a variety of efforts in the recovery community. She continues to be active in the recovery community as a mentor and lecture speaker. It has been her experience across the board that the nature of addictions and interventions are a daunting task each family faces. She states that we must never forget this is a family disease and it is treatable. And finally, her book, When Enough is Enough, A Comprehensive Guide to Successful Intervention, was published by Penguin in April 2008. She aims to help loved ones with the process of intervention. It's available at all major bookstores and Amazon. She has been married for 50 years to her husband, Mike, and she is blessed to have 2 grown children, her daughter, Bridget, and son, Kelly. Hello.
Ta-da!
Wow, that's a long one. I don't think, there was nothing really to cut out because everything you've done is so important in today's recovery landscape. So I guess with all the things that you do in the recovery community, all of the, your family, everything else that keeps you busy, what made you decide to talk to us today?
Well, first of all, Sherry, I highly respect you.
Oh.
I don't really do these much unless I love the publication and I like the person. I did one a couple of years ago, and when they got through editing it, it was like sounded a lot more like Marilyn Monroe than me.
Well,
That was lovely. Where did that come from? It certainly didn't come from me.
well, that won't happen here because we are a magazine app. So this interview is, raw and real. Everything you say is going to be you and genuine, and nothing's going to be edited in or out.
Well, it made my life a lot more exciting than it was, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny.
But I just think that we all, no matter whether it's apps or press or Zoom or what, I all think we need to connect. One of the reasons that I was, enticed into a lot of my business was it's community driven. And I'm really interested in that.
Yeah, and now more than ever, of course, with what's going on. Of course, this may not, I believe this pandemic will still be going on when this airs. Hopefully we'll be on the downside of it, but right now we're in the heat of it. So we can't help but talk about that because we know that alcohol sales have risen, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more depression and anxiety and suicide. So,
and the drug dealers are still open.
Of course. Of course. So now more than ever, I think people are going to be really reading this, well, not reading, but viewing this interview because people are, online more than ever. But, getting back to the TV show Intervention, which of course you were a real trailblazer in the recovery movement with that reality TV show. I myself was the psychotherapist on Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew. And I'm just curious what inspired you to sort of take recovery to the media world?
Well, Sherry, the truth is most everything I've accomplished and most everything that I've done has found me. It's that kind of thing where it's stand still, look up, and here it comes. So I got a phone call from a wonderful man named Sam Metler in the summer, I think, of 2004. And, it's one of those phone calls that you go, whose number is that? And I picked it up and it went, are you Kenny Finnigan? I said, yes. And he goes, hi, I'm Sam Metler and I want to do a show called Intervention. And I went, what?
Wow.
And away we went. It's like, you know what? It's just like kind of like 12-step programs or therapy or anything else. I don't know why it works, but if you do it diligently, and you do it with, great honor, and you don't make this about TV, you make it about helping the addicts, it worked. I went for an interview and everybody was very sincere. They wanted me to do a mock intervention. Which is always kind of difficult. I do it when I do workshops and stuff, but here I am with a bunch of, TV executives going, okay, you'll be the heroin addict and you'll be the, and they're going, what?
Yeah.
I happened to pick the right guy to be the addict because he refused to go to treatment and started pounding on the table. And so I thought, yeah, I said, actor, I presume. It just the way it went. I didn't get the job at first. They wanted somebody who was about 5'10".
Oh, right.
Long breasts and blonde hair, and I'm 5'2", red hair, and I just think they probably wanted her in her nice 30s.
Yeah.
And which I wasn't. And I just turned around and said, there is no such. To gain wisdom, you have to have age. And my husband is a very wonderful singer, as is my son. And I just turned around and said, 17-year-olds don't sing the blues. So call me if you need me.
Oh, good.
I don't think they got it. I got it. And the next week they called me back. And there's some funny parts of it. I never worn foundation and a few other things that I ended up having to do. Dyed my hair, was getting gray. And but I thought, one more time I can sacrifice a lot of my wants to help this situation out. And, Sherry, the thing that's so strange is it's an authentic show. If we're out shooting and somebody who is the designated addict finds out that we are the show instead of a documentary, we were usually gone within 2 hours. No explanation, no see you later. I always felt really bad because the addict didn't tell the addict who we were. You know, somebody in the family goes, just be nice, you're getting free treatment. Or,
Right.
and of course, a lot of people forgot we were mic'd, as you well know. So
Right.
I never ever found the show to compromise the dignity of an addict or its family or myself. And therefore I stuck around, and I believe that it's coming back. It's been canceled. They got over 150 letters and emails, and they brought it back. So I guess I never dreamed I'd be stopped on the street with someone saying, I wish my family had cared enough to do that for me. I remember the first time I got recognized, it was at Christmas time at Costco, and somebody thought I was taking my husband, who's about 6'7", to treatment. They go, drug lady, is it him? And I went, oh my God, he was horrified. You know, but it's...
I think you're both in recovery, you and your, I mean, obviously your husband too, okay.
But I mean, it was just like, you know, you don't go book shopping at Christmas if you're doing an intervention, but I thought, how cute. So the journey continues, you know.
Well, I know that when I did Celebrity Rehab, it was an amazing show, and it was just and I agree with you. I think intervention is as real as Celebrity Rehab was. I think that just sometimes there are people that are naysayers, and a lot of people would write me, and again, I only aired maybe 3 or 4 times. So
I remember exactly.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you. So
well, I like Dr. Drew.
Yeah, he's great. And
I've been friend with Bob since MAP, since the Musicians Assistance Program. So
exactly.
I knew both of them, and I knew several of the people that were on it. We're friends and old friends. My husband.
But you never felt, even when you were mic'd and they were filming you, you really are in the moment. I mean, you're not really thinking about the cameras. You're not, it's very real, and it couldn't be any other way. So I get that. And yet I would have people write me and say, you know, this is an anonymous program. You're breaking the code of anonymity. So I guess I'm
not, that wasn't a 12-step meeting.
That's right.
It was a rehab.
That's right.
And the same thing with us, you know. I put very strict guidelines to the to A&E and also to the production company that you don't mention sponsor, you don't have a big book sitting on the, you know, sitting on the coffee table. And they only slipped up once, and they corrected it in the editing. Because I wasn't there to break traditions, and I wasn't there to do, I promoted it. You know, I begged families to go to Al-Anon, and which is, you know, more difficult than getting a duct of water, but it's the best aftercare plan there is.
You got that right. Saved my life back in 20. I've been a member for, and again, I can break my own anonymity. I've been in Al-Anon since 2012, and it saved my life. So
well, I'm sober because of Al-Anon, because of my mother-in-law had a black belt in it.
Okay, well, great. Congratulations for that. How do you feel about all the new programs popping up? I mean, there's so much online recovery. There's this, what we call the Sober Curious movement, yoga and recovery, you know.
Sober Curious, that's curious. I guess maybe all the names are taken.
Yeah.
I think the most appalling thing that happened to me was when I heard that there was a treatment center where you could smoke pot and eat edibles. And that it was the fastest and easiest way for opiate withdrawal.
So were you for it or not for it? Or
I was not for it.
Not for it, okay.
And it isn't that I was an advocate to certainly legalize marijuana. I'll be honest with you about that. And I feel that it's, you know, very similar to alcohol, except better for you, I guess. But I don't want to substitute one kind of recovery for another kind of recovery. I don't know, you know, and what I had heard and understood was also used kind of as a Pavlovian type of, you do this and you do that, and then you can have a joint. I mean, that, or have an edible. And I don't want a reward system where at the end of it, there's a pill or a joint or a drink or anything else. We all live that way. I know that marijuana has a lot of good uses, but I don't think one of them is detox.
Well, I guess what you're saying is, addiction recovery is an inside job. And if we keep rewarding with outside shiny objects, then you're just getting addicted.
You're getting a really big charm bracelet.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just a kind of like, we talk a lot about cross addiction, where you're just replacing one thing for another. But how do you tell a parent that, a parent whose child is strung out and maybe this is working for that family? Like, I don't know what my opinion is on it.
Well, I think I always say if it's not a problem, it won't be a problem not to do it. Mm-hmm. But I'd say for years and years, I had parents go, well, he just smokes pot. I mean, it really is age specific, let him have some fun. And, the other thing I really feel is Dr. Timothy Fong from UCLA has been adamant about talking about the psychosis that is now going with this dabbing and oil and all this kind of stuff. It isn't just a great little joint with 8% THC.
But it's stronger, than it's ever
been. It's the oils that are 87%. And I guess maybe it was about 6 or 7 months ago when I had an intervention and I was certain that this woman was on meth. There just was no doubt. She was psychotic. She was delusional. And I thought, oh, hell, And she swore over and over again in the middle of the intervention. I carry a drug test with me, and I drug tested her. There wasn't 1 ounce of anything in her system but THC, and she dabbed all day with this electric bong thing that looked like an outer spaceship. And she was completely psychotic and ended up having to it was a really long detox because, pot manifests itself in your system for probably longer than any other drug. And this dabbing, whew.
Yeah, I went to a New Year's party and somebody was smoking pot out of what I guess they call it a pen. I have no idea what that means. I don't smoke pot.
Oh, the little...
I don't even know. I don't even know what it is, but they suppose, and I should know really, but they fainted. they fainted. They just fell down. It was an older guy and, we just don't know what's in it. It's stronger than ever. We got to be really careful.
Well, I'm sure it's been cut with fentanyl, everything else is, but, until maybe a year ago, Sherry, it was really hard to find a treatment center who would take a kid or even somebody older who did nothing but smoke pot and, maybe have some prescription medication that was actually redeemed to them. And it was like, I'd go, yeah, but this guy's been smoking pot for 40 years. And they go, and I said, well, it's going to be, it isn't that the detox might be so severe. He's got to remove himself away from this environment and, and be introduced to MA. It was really hard to get good treatment because you're going to sit in a room with a bunch of 21, 23-year-old heroin addicts and your story's not the same. The outcome might be, but I don't believe marijuana has ruined lives like heroin has. There certainly haven't been an immense amount of overdose and dying. Certainly it was a real conflict for me because I didn't know what to do other than having him just walk into a 12-step meeting that's, directed at marijuana. Yeah. And I have to tell you, it's difficult to get a lot of time there,
Yeah, yeah. So you do believe at this point you can mix someone that's a heroin addict and a pot addict?
Yes, I do. I think that you have to it's one of the surrenders of finding the similarities instead of the differences.
That's right. Melody Beatty is a colleague, friend of mine. She endorsed both my books.
Wonderful.
I love her. And she doesn't like this question though. So I'll ask you the question. You probably won't like it either, but how do we support that family member without enabling? She doesn't like it because it's just sort of a corny, it's sort of a what's the word? It's not, you know, it's just not, I don't know. What do you think of that question?
How do I support a family without enabling them?
Or how do you help a family support their addict, but not enable their addict?
Well, in my intervention, I go through a long kind of directional kind of workshop with them. I spend 4 or 5 hours with a pre-intervention, much longer than I ever would an intervention. Because I need to educate, I need to have everyone be aware of every move. If they run out the door, who's going to go smoke a cigarette with them, all the rest of it.
So it's like you have a list of boundaries.
Oh yeah, and I have a huge description that I go through with them. What is the difference between codependency and enabling?
Oh.
And the difference, you know, for me, I always feel like kind of enabling is doing things for somebody that can't do it for themselves, and codependency is doing something for somebody that can do it for themselves. But when you get somebody who's a, you know, a young addict, it all meshes together.
Yeah.
And I, you know, it's training. It's just like everything that I went through, not to drink at these emotions, not to do, I mean, you know, these families that think that they do this tough love and they leave $20 on the counter and because they don't want them to steal any more from grandma. I mean, I don't recommend that. I don't recommend getting your kid in the car and driving downtown to score. But I understand the enabling part of it because you don't want them to die on your watch, you know?
Exactly.
So,
I guess that is, you know, goes back to like this whole idea of, you know, detaching with love. Like sometimes you do have to detach for your own mental health. I did. I had to, of course, this was a husband, this wasn't a child, but, you know, I had to reach a boundary. And once I, you know, I was getting sick, and this happens a lot to parents of adults.
oh, absolutely.
You get sick. I lost hair. I got shingles, staph infection, kidney stone. I know I was really sick. I just could not let go of this addict. And here I am, a therapist. I've worked on Celebrity Rehab. I ran a family program at a rehab, but I couldn't let go of this person I loved because you know, he was a wonderful person. He was just very sick.
And in your heart, you knew that it could all go into remission if he would just stop. And love has nothing to do with addiction, I'm sorry to tell you.
Yeah, it doesn't. Well, finally I did let go, and it didn't make a difference because it's taken him another 10 years to get sober, and who knows if this sobriety will last for him. So I just wish him the best and pray for him, and I pray for all the families that
Me too.
I love, you know. Getting back to codependency, because that's my thing too. Why are there not treatment centers like insurance companies that will pay for codependency treatment? I mean, there's Bridge for, you know, I'm not going to start naming the treatment.
Yeah, well, and that's a great one. And the one in Bowling Green, it's good, really, really good. Tara Hobart's brilliant.
But what else can we do, you know, because I want to do so much more for these families. And
well, you know, actually, I think it was maybe in the maybe middle 90s, I had a friend who had gone through exactly what you had gone through with your husband, and she went to Cottonwood, and they had a codependency track. You know, when I first got into this business or even got sober, I always jokingly said, how do you keep a marriage together, you know? You know they want water before they're thirsty. So it's that kind of thing where codependency, are you crazy? I invented it. But the part of it is that I had never seen to which level of supporting an addiction or alcoholic, you know, and, you know, I kind of chuckled to myself about terminal. I think not. And boy, I changed my mind after, you know, getting really invested and involved in the process of intervention and doing family groups for the Musicians Assistance Program. You know, I saw people who would lay down in the middle of the 101 freeway and get run over if something, you know, if this could happen.
Yeah.
And I cut myself back. I mean, I really understood very clearly that it could kill them.
It can. I mean, they show that, you can have people that love an addict or are dealing with that, have more heart problems, cholesterol issues.
Oh,
I told you all my issues. The stress can kill you. So I really think insurance companies really need to look at that. I wish there was something more we could do.
well, the Meadows has wonderful programs. Ridge has wonderful programs. The workshop element of it to at least shake their bones,
But insurance, I don't think covers that. Maybe they do at places like.
Well,
maybe. I'm not sure.
no, but I wish that, I used to send people to the Betty Ford family program, even when they weren't going to Betty Ford.
Yeah,
they were lovely enough to scholarship of some of the families in the children's program with Jerry Moe. Some of the families that we would send to treatment centers that had no family program, which always just made me furious. Yeah. There's a lot of treatment centers. Let's get some that have family programs. But I would say out of offering it to 50 people, maybe 5 went.
Yeah.
And that was, wonderful training, and especially for the kids. I really wanted so many kids, but they couldn't afford to go to Palm Springs, to stay in a hotel. And on several occasions, the show and Betty Ford really stepped up, which I was incredibly grateful for.
Oh, nice.
But there wasn't anything else. There wasn't any, in the late 80s and 90s, there wasn't anybody that you could send these people to. They'll get over it, and they didn't get over it, And when that same behavior comes back, when the addict alcoholic gets through with treatment, it's deadly.
Yeah.
We're right back to where we started from.
Right. It's a muscle that has to be exercised forever. That's another thing. A lot of people don't even, believe it or not, a lot of people don't even know what the word codependency means. Let's just talk about not even just loving an addict, but let's talk about like approval seeking and people pleasing and all those little isms that codependents have. How do you get that word out there without people always thinking it's just, well, you're married to an addict or something?
Oh,
like
no.
The old fashioned, where Melody Beatty started. Now it's so much bigger.
She did. And Pia Melody.
Yes. But now it's a bigger conversation. It's because let me just think in the
last 20 years, I have a clinical diagnosis for it. It's called bratism. And I see it. I see the kid that started being a little unruly at 12 and then has an older brother who's, varsity captain of the basketball team, and the younger sister who makes straight A's, and who gets all the attention.
Yeah.
And so I think I really think it's a habitual behavior. When I'm good, I don't get this kind of, when I'm bad, boy, I get it all. And I've spent a long time, I really actually considered writing a whole chapter to my book called, the kids that are left behind, because, I don't have anything to worry about. My daughter, she's a straight A student. She's going to Brown. She bought her own car. She's had a job since she was 12, babysitting. And I go, and boy, are they resentful. Whew.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They are invisible. I have clients. I call that, what I diagnose those people with? PTSD, because
I agree.
They've been living in a home where everything is other focused. There's a lot of chaos around them, and they're just left to be the lost child, as we call them.
That's my favorite word. But at one point, all of us were lost. But what we did with it, some of us found each other, or we found ourselves.
Well, what was your story, Candy? Just, briefly, okay, obviously you might have had the genetic predisposition or whatever, but what was really the underlying issue that...
Well, I'll start out by saying I'm adopted.
Okay.
And so I was probably 6 or 7 years sober before I ever stood up at a podium and said, Candy alcoholic, and I was born and raised in Kansas, and I'm adopted. I never thought it figured into my story. It wasn't that I ever didn't know I was adopted, because I knew from the minute that, they took me home. It was an interesting situation since it was at the end of World War II, and there were a lot of war babies, and my parents spent 3 weekends picking a daughter with red hair out. I mean, they went to Oklahoma, they went to Kansas City.
Oh,
There was like a plethora of little babies. And it was like, I said, kind of like tomatoes,
oh my God. Oh, you know who your biological parents were?
No. And
My God.
I was never really curious about it, oddly enough. I had 5 or 6 other friends growing up in Wichita, Kansas that were adopted. It wasn't like such an unheard thing.
Yeah.
It was, I was 5 or 6, and my mom used to bring home a lot of clothes and try them on and see if my dad liked them and then take them back to the store. I thought that was kind of what might happen to me if I didn't fit in.
Oh.
My parents had lost a biological child in 45 to polio. And no matter how much money they had or who they knew, they couldn't save this child. And so I think that the precautionary part of my mother was so afraid to get close because this had happened to her biological child. She was 7. By the way, her name was Sherry.
Oh, so you came after Sherry.
Yeah. And I always imagined myself as the replacement child, which was never, ever said to me. I kind of made it up. So at 5 or 6, I would say, well, if, I would try to do something to see if the reaction would be, you don't fit here, we'll take you back, which of course never happened. But I drove my mother crazy. And finally, I think I was maybe 6 or 7, and she said, Candy, you just got to stop this. Your mother was in a car accident, and she's up in heaven.
Is that true?
So we would let her take you back anyway. And I found out when I was, my mom died when she was 94. And I was in my 50s, and my cousin handed me my adoption papers.
So is that what happened to your real mother?
No.
Oh, we don't know what happened.
No, it didn't happen.
It didn't.
Yeah, I had mentioned it to my father years later and said, well, there isn't any option for me to meet. They were always called birth mothers. And he goes, well, I don't think it's necessary. I think it would really hurt her mother. And I said, well, she's dead. She died in a car accident. My dad went, what?
Oh, God.
And I went, well, that's what Mom told me 7 years ago. There wasn't any reason to bring it up if there was an end to it already. My brother, he's my adopted brother, went and found his family, and it was disastrous.
Oh, okay.
Like the old slam the door in your face and that kind of thing. So,
well, what I'm hearing, Candy, is you just obviously had a lot of abandonment issue stuff going on.
Well, in attachment disorders, and I didn't realize it until I started working closely with the Meadows, and they just kept having me go. I went to Survivors 1, I went to Survivors 2, I had to and it just kept going. Because I had always felt so lucky. And so, nobody ever said, and if you weren't here, honey, you'd be in an orphanage. It wasn't that. I conjured up all of that, trust me.
Right, it's insidious, and we create this. We create this.
So I guess about 10 or 11 years ago, this wonderful woman named Sarah Burns, who is very invested in adoption, and she had given up a child and a son. And it's called the American Adoption Congress. And there's a conference once a year, and I was the first person that ever spoke about addiction. Ever.
Mm-hmm.
There's the group to the left, which is the adopted parents. There's a group to the right, which are the birth parents. And then in the middle are the peeps. And the first thing they do when they get to these conferences is they want a room where they can have 12-step meetings. An enormous percentage of them. I guessed it about 80 or 81, but not everybody knows they're adopted, so it was kind of impossible for me. And and back in the 40s, you had a baby and you never laid eyes on him, gave birth in the dark, and they, took the baby. And I mean, it was like, oh, just horrendous. And you
Well, they
hear
did
all
the
about
same thing with miscarriages. Like my mother had a miscarriage before me, and she doesn't even know if it was a girl or boy. I believe it was a girl. I believe I have a soul sister up there, but that's just
and so it's all that stuff where
secrets.
I lectured at these conferences, and I guess I can't say I was poo-pooed, but all the adoptees, all the people that were hanging out at 12 steps certainly understood. But the rest of them were like, well, you did it to fit in. No, we had an extra big hole in our soul that needed to be filled. And I think that 12-step has been so attractive to so many adopted people because, we always hear, yes, you can find your own family. You can create your own family. Not that everybody that was adopted is miserable. That's certainly, I had a wonderful, wonderful upbringing.
But we know that there's also in vitro, I mean, we know, or you.
Oh my God, these sperm donors.
Well, not in vitro, I'm sorry. What am I trying to say? When you're pregnant, when the mother's pregnant, like your mother probably had a lot of anxiety, your biological mother.
Oh, I'm sure. She was young, right? Catholic. Let's start with the guilt. Irish. There you go.
There you go. And so already, you're growing and you're dealing with this cell memory really of, I mean, they say that this really does exist, that anxiety.
Well, I'll tell you what was fascinating to me.
Utero, that's what I meant to say, in utero.
Yeah. Oh, in utero. Yeah. After talking to some really intellectual women who have made a life out of treating and helping adopted kids, is that bonding between mother and child. It doesn't matter if it's with an adopted mother, the whole symbiotico thing, never ever. You always lack that in most relationships that you have. And I started to write a book called Adoption Before Addiction, and the book had to stop because I couldn't have enough people tell the truth, or they didn't know they were adopted, or don't blame me. I had to give this child up. Then I just thought, oh no, this is my way.
I really believe in this. I was premature. I was born in 1959, and I didn't meet my mother for 3 months. I was in an incubator. They were afraid of passing germs. Now they have all these special programs for preemie babies because they know they need that attachment. So
absolutely.
I was a love addict and codependent from the get-go because I was always searching for love, because my mother.
The only touching you had was through those little rubber holes.
Actually through my feet. I didn't even have a sucking response. So I was fed through my feet. I mean, really, it's very sad. And they had oxygen over my mouth. It must have been and I always had an anxiety disorder. But thank God, Candy, we now know why. And now we have to heal these wounds. We have to heal these wounds. And a lot of this does play on addiction. They often go together.
It's like I was saying to somebody, to a really close friend of mine, Dr. James Flowers, I was saying to him, this click word trauma, I'm a big believer in it. I'm a horrendous, I think it's like the missing puzzle piece. Yeah. But I think there's so many people taking advantage of that and the treatment.
Oh.
It's a 3-day workshop. I think, no, it isn't.
No, it is not a 3-day workshop. It's if you've ever heard of the book, Waking the Tiger.
Oh, I read them all.
Yeah, so that's my thing. I do somatic experiencing with my clients.
But that's what I'm saying. So
the only way.
When you see a treatment center that says trauma-driven, I go, money-driven.
Thank you, Candy. Thank you for saying that because it's true. Everybody thinks it's an instant fix. None of this is an instant fix. It didn't take me 61 years to get like this, and it's not gonna, I've been in trauma therapy for 10 years doing the somatic work. It's a life changer, but it takes work and it takes time. And I totally hear you.
I'd never really actually heard of it until I went to the Meadows and did my first survivor training, not as a client, but as a referent. And then I went back 2 weeks later because I thought, damn, how come I never knew this? And because it was another thing that wasn't talked about.
Well, this has been so enlightening and amazing, and I'm wondering if we could just sort of close the interview. Well, besides telling me again about your book and where we can find you and reach you, is there any last hope that you would like to offer to the families or to the addict themselves that are still struggling?
Well, I was just reading. This is such a tremendous time of relapse. And we as addicts and alcoholics are isolators anyway. Now here we are where we want to go out now that everybody says you got to stay in.
I know.
I was watching, my husband and I were watching TV, and we saw where there all these exotic drinks that have like 151 rum, and they were big, huge pictures of it that kept chilled, and we're delivering them. And I said to my husband, where the hell were they when we needed them? You know, isolated by yourself and knock, knock, here's a picture. And the loneliness. I have so many friends that have long-term sobriety that are so gutturally lonely.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important. There's Zoom as far as 12-step meetings and stuff, but I think that we have to reach out and go, I'm here for you. I can't touch you. I can't feel you, but you have to know I'm here for you. And I can't imagine that the suicide rate isn't just going to really climb.
Yeah,
thank God there are telehealth, professionals that are working on this. And, this is the time as we are fearful of dying, the world is healing. It's I don't know. God has a great sense of humor. Mine does anyway. And, there's less pollution. There's, I walked out in my garden and there were more bees than I'd seen in 5 or 6 years. And so as we have to stay in and take care of ourselves.
We're doing a reset. We're doing a reset economically. We're doing a reset in the world and the environment. We're doing a reset personally.
Exactly. As the outside heals, because we've been tearing it up for a long time.
I love that perspective. While the outside heals, we are healing our insides.
And we had to be separated to be able to do it.
Right. And yet we're so connected. Thank God this is where the internet is such a gift. Oh my God.
My husband and I said that last night right before we were going to bed. He just said, the internet's driving me crazy, because this guy came on and he was talking about these 2 medications. If you take them and you take this and you gargle with lemon juice and you had to take, that you won't get it. And it's like we have a whole bunch of experts now that aren't experts.
Watch the snake oil salesman for sure.
Well, and we've always had them, but now the fear has been set in that to the point of where we'll believe anything. I was laughing because we take a walk, every day, and there aren't any lemons on the trees because I know everybody's stealing them and going home and, gargling them, and oh my God, it's that panic. But, this isn't anything worse than when we were in the middle of our addiction. It was going to kill us every day. We just had a solution that was to stop it. And we could be in remission. It's like I'll have 34 years next month. Has it been easy? No. But I just didn't pick up no matter what. And I have to apply that to this. I cannot go out and go to Target, even if I'm dying to go. It's not my grocery store, and I don't need to shop, and I don't need to. I'm sorry that I've done my first Zoom intervention, which was interesting.
Wow.
Well, it was interesting, but that touchy-feely part was missing that is so important. And thank God the person went. I think they just wanted away from their family.
Well, I would say, Candy, I'm going to say that we are made of energy, and all the love and all the touchy-feely love that you have in your heart, I believe, can be transmuted through the energy of that.
I believe the honesty, the help, and the hope was certainly there.
The energy is just transmitted. It is.
It is. And your honesty, your authentic, being authentic, I think is really important. And you're one of those women, Sherry, so thank you.
Candy. And tell us how we can find you. Tell us again about your book.
My book is When Enough is Enough. I wrote it. It was 465-page book that the editor edited down to 136 pages.
Okay.
Because as an alcoholic addict, I kept repeating myself. Kind of like chapter 5 every day, you know. So, it's an easy, comprehensive. I think one of the things is interventionists have put this so out of perspective. There's 11,000 more of them than when we started. And not everyone is qualified. And I think that if you think you can't do this because you can't afford a professional, this is a comprehensive guide. I've walked people through it.
Wonderful.
It works. It works. The love, the help, it's there. And it's just, it's much more of a text than it really is. I mean, I don't tell any stories of interventions I've done, that's for sure. But I just did it because so many people asked for help that there wasn't enough of me, and you know, they couldn't.
Yeah.
There's that. And life is going on, and I'm grateful to get out of the house and help more families. And you can go to candyfinnigan.com, and there's a link where you can get in touch with me. And you know, no request is too small.
Oh, great. Thank you, Candy. Thank you for doing this interview today. Thank you for sharing you with us.
Thank you so much for asking me. It's really been a joy.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.